gambling is now a big part of the vernacular and a big part of the conversation when it comes to the NFL and all sports. And there was some changes to where Bryce Young out of Alabama was the overall consensus to be the number one overall pick, even with the Bears sitting at 1 and then most likely keeping Justin Fields and trading away the pick. And then the Carolina Panthers trade up from number 9, give up a bunch of draft capital. They give up DJ Moore, a really good wide receiver. They go all the way to 9, and you saw all the draft odds completely change. And now C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State was the favorite almost immediately at well over 3-1. Well, there's been some new reports and some speculation that has come out that Bryce Young really blew away everybody in Carolina. Frank Reich loves him. David Tepper, the owner, loves him. He took some ST test or whatever the hell it's called. It's like some Wonderlic light test. And apparently he knocked it out of the park and was just phenomenal, much like Joe Burrow was when he took it a couple of years ago and went number 1 to the Cincinnati Bengals. And so all this new information that has come out, and now the odds have shifted dramatically again, where Bryce Young is back on top, almost a 3-1 favorite to be the number 1 overall pick of the Carolina Panthers. And so now C.J. Stroud's looking around going, what the hell, man? I was projected to go number 1. They had me at a pro day. I looked great in my semifinal game, but now we've got Bryce Young is potentially going to be that number 1 overall pick, and it's looking that way for the Carolina Panthers.
Well, I had a chance to super randomly call his championship game when he was back out here in Southern California playing high school football. And obviously, we all talk about his size. He's small. He's not a big guy. But you ever been around somebody, and it could be any facet of life. It could be sports. It could be academics. It could just be maybe that, even just that it factor in life. Like people just like that person. He's one of those people that you saw play, and you're like, well, that just looks easy. You know, and especially it didn't look hard. He didn't have to, and obviously I don't want to make he works hard. He has trained his whole life. His father's invested, like they're all invested in this. But you just watch him, you're like, oh, that kid's good. Then he goes to college. All right, but he's going to Alabama now. This is a big school. Let me just see. He's been playing at SEC. He's just really good at this position. He understands it. He's trained for it. He's got the temperament for it. By all accounts, his teammates and his coaches love him. So he just reminds me he's one of those guys, like, you're going to try to find ways to outthink it. Well, maybe he's too small. Maybe he's not this. And then sometimes you do that in life. It could be a girl, like, man, maybe this. Man. Like, no, she's right for you. She's it. This job, that's it. This case, this quarterback, this kid, he's just it. And sometimes it just happens that way. And I think we trick ourselves out, and maybe, Tua did him a disservice a bit just because of getting injured and being smaller. And obviously the Alabama situation, both playing there. But when you watch him, you're just like, oh, he's just really that good. When you listen to him, you're like, oh, he's the kind of the guy you want in front of the podium. And he's just that type of talent. Then you got guys like Peyton Manning, obviously, not only great as far as what he did on the field, but somebody just from a family of knowing football, because that can be two different things. He's like, no, this guy's the real deal. And he compared him to, I believe, Joe Burrow, and I kind of like that because obviously he's smaller, but the way he gets the ball out, I remember watching Joe Burrow, I'm like, that comes out differently than everybody else. That pass is coming out, and I remember watching Bryce Young thinking the same thing, like, how is a small kid who's like 6'17" throwing it like that? And I've always been impressed with him. Again, I could be biased. I was here, I saw him play, I called his game, but I think he's the real deal, and I think these teams are realizing it. In this case, the Panthers like, yo, hold on, wait. I know he's not built. C.J. Stroud, I know he's not huge, but sometimes he just is what he is. The last 4 or 5 years of his life, he's just been that guy.
And to your point, just from the physical standpoint, so, he's 5'10" and 1/8 or whatever the hell his measurement was at the combine. It was something like that. And it was like, well, he was listed at 6 foot at Alabama. It's like, okay. I mean, so they're embellishing on some of the numbers. Have you been on Instagram? Why do you think they created filters? So you could embellish what you look like. Everybody does it. We all know what's happening here. I watched him, and I swear to God, I don't look at him and go, ooh, he's 5'10". Nope. I don't. When I look at Kyler Murray, I go, that's a small guy who plays small, but he's so explosive. He's like the new UFO videos where he's in one part of the screen and another. When Kyler Murray moves, that's when I look at him and go, oh, that looks like that tic-tac-toe craft that was in San Diego a few months ago that they spotted. Like, it just, I look at it differently than with Bryce Young. I never get the impression, small guy playing quarterback. It's just, he's a good quarterback. And to your point on the Southern California ties and people listening out here on AM 570 LA Sports, you know the long lineage of modern-day quarterbacks. Yep. And you know whether it's Matt Leinart, and I think it was Matt Barkley is another one.
Was JT Daniels there too?
Like a lot. Like there's a lineage of great quarterbacks. And you talk to some people who covered Bryce Young, and they'll say, best of the bunch. Of all those guys,
100%.
Best of the bunch. And he shows up at Alabama. And I remember the first person who told me watch out for him was I was doing a show here at Fox Sports Radio on Sunday nights, and there was an Alabama spring game. And I'm thinking, all right, well, who's really watching the Alabama spring game? Of course, Brady Quinn is. And he says, hey, by the way, I'm telling you right now, look at Bryce Young to win the Heisman. I watched the spring game. I was like, oh, you're the one. He said, no, I watched the spring game. I'm telling you, watch for Bryce Young to win the Heisman. He was a 10-1 underdog. He goes on. He wins the Heisman, best player in college football. You look at what happened last year, and like when people make the comparisons to Tua, because there's been other people who said, from Alabama and he's smaller, I think the big difference between Bryce Young and Tua is Tua had pre-existing injury history, not just what happened with his hip and that bad injury he suffered against Mississippi State. He had a couple of procedures on his ankles. He was banged up in that game when he was hobbling around when he played Joe Burrow, that classic Bama LSU game that those two guys went back and forth on. And then you've got the concussions. Bryce Young only missed one game, and it was a shoulder issue, and it was this past year. Other than that, it's off the charts. Everybody you talk to, it's just the fact that he's 5'10" and change that people are all hung up on.
Yeah, and I think that we do that in all sports. I think we get a little lazy with that, right? This person's left-handed, so look at Manu Ginobili. Okay, just settle down. They're both left-handed, but they actually play a little differently. And I think when I compare the two, I think his arm's stronger. I think he gets the pass out faster. They're both good as far as anticipation, but you could maybe Bryce is even ahead of him in that. I just watch him and I'm like, oh no, he's just that good. Watch him in high school. Oh, he's just that good. Listen to all the coaches. Listen to quarterbacks like Brady Quinn. Oh, he's just that guy. Listen to Peyton freaking Manning, maybe the most cerebral quarterback of all time. Yeah. And he's like, no, he's that guy. He's Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, the same thing. When you watch, all right, let me. I hear the hype. I remember sitting down and really watching him. I heard the name. Let me watch. And you're just like, no, that's different. Yeah. That's different. Everything he's doing is, if you listen to his anticipation, okay, two guys are covering that receiver. Okay, he got it there. All right, they're on him. How did he get out of it? He's not even that fast or loose. He just knew how to get out of that pressure and made that pass. You just watch him. You're like, no, he's really that guy. And he had that air about him. Joe Burrow gets to NFL. You're like, he still carries himself like, I'm that guy. And Bryce Young is less maybe bombastic or like, a little bravado. That's Joe Burrow. I don't know if he's walking around with a cigar in his mouth kind of guy and throwing up the money sign and all that.
He's so much better if he was, too.
We need that. It's fun, right?
Come on, man.
We need a little bit of that. He does give you the gee golly shucks Russell Wilson kind of. Not that extreme.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Russ is on the extreme end.
Yeah, Russ is way to the extreme. And I can't imagine Bryce Young is going to demand his own office and his own parking spot if he gets to Carolina.
Were you at the Super Bowl, the convention center, Radio Row, when he was here in L.A.? Was that last year? Not this past February,
year before.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, we used to hear all this stuff about Russell Wilson, the stuff you just mentioned, or even before it became so detailed, just little things, Richard Sherman's and the beast modes and other guys, and just, I'm telling y'all, he ain't like y'all think, man. I'm telling you, we're like, settle down, man. He's a great guy. He's well read. He's a team player. I'll tell you what, that Russell Wilson is the guy you want your son to be like, right? We were hearing all that, and then I remember being at that Super Bowl. Now we're starting to hear little inklings here and there. Dude, Troy Aikman walks by, Emmitt Smith walks by. You had celebrities who aren't even, just actor Anthony Anderson. This person. You know where the biggest entourage, and I mean this by far, Russell Wilson. Like as far as handlers, not entourage like a bunch of the homies. I mean, just she's covering this, she's covering that. He's on top of that. That's my guy. That's the security guy. That's the guy. She's just going to hold my phone. He's going to carry my briefcase. I was like, because he's short, you literally see this like amoeba of people moving, and you're like, man, who is that? Kevin Hart must be here. Like, what's going on? Like, why is there just a group of people following him? Like, literally, growing up in Detroit area, favorite athlete of all time, any sport, is Barry Sanders. Guess who's walking around with just like 3 people? Barry Sanders. Guess who I was able to talk to? Ended up coming back, got him on my show. Then we chatted up, talked about kids and life. Barry Sanders. Russell Wilson, you barely could see him. He's in the middle. He's got a circle of 12 people walking around, and just you're like, man, he's really kind of little.
He's got some diva.
Yeah, got a little more diva than I thought.
Yeah, it's funny because you heard rumblings, like you mentioned, about the guys from Seattle, because that was really what sort of fractured that team, because they're on the doorstep of winning back-to-back Super Bowls. I mean, they're right there. And you make the decision to throw it on from the 1-yard line and not give it to Marshawn Lynch when he was, that was your opportunity to win the game. And from that moment on, that organization splintered, because one of the thoughts was that they were trying to put Russell Wilson in a spot to take over the reins and kind of move away from the Legion of Boom era that it really kind of built the leadership and the foundation of the team. And there was some resentment there from the players. And it was funny when you go back to the season opener last year when you had Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and the reunion, and they're in Seattle. And it's like, man, Russell, was there. They brought a Super Bowl to see it. You think... And all of these former players that were never at any of the other games over the past couple of years, even Richard Sherman, who went and played for San Francisco, their arch rival afterwards. And, man, they were all buddy-buddy, and they were all with Pete Carroll, and that right there told me everything I needed to know. All the stuff you heard, the whispers and things like that, there was validity to them. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been the bad blood that existed last year.
Especially when it's coming from a quarterback. Like, usually – that guy has, bonded with the teammates. So, I mean, you got literally, not to be funny, but T.O. crying, that's my quarterback. Like, you're the leader. You're the leader. You've been through it. We grew together. We had the ups and downs. And there's, sometimes – and we also know in real life, not just football, time heals all wounds, right? So as you get separated from somebody, you're able to look back, we were a little disgruntled. We had a couple little beefs. But you know what, baby? It's all good. Come here, baby. What's up? It's all love. What's up? For them to still be like, years later, that lets you know, because you think of all the sports you've seen, right?
Yeah, there was pit stops afterwards, and still they had issues.
That's when you know, because usually, how many times have we seen guys? I mean, God bless the dead. Shaq and Kobe, you can't get much more successful than them, right? You win 3 out of 4. You're just the best talk of the league, the toast of the town. Yet they were a little beefed out at times, but then they were able to come back, thankfully, before his passing, and and show love and really just look back and be like, man, I was just trying to figure out my way, be an alpha. You were trying to figure it out. It was all good. We were young knuckleheads. They made amends. And it's like, if you don't do that with your quarterback, years have passed. You guys went to a couple of Super Bowls. It just says a lot. Yeah. That really does to me. And then, like I said, I saw him, and again, I don't want to read too much into that. But then you just start to hear the stuff, parking spots, office time. Hey, yo, Russell. Hey, man, talk to my agent. I'm a little busy. I'll see you next Thursday at 8.
And he hung out with management. It's sort of like Noxie,
Yeah, that's a great point.
He gets accused of that, going up on the 5th floor all the time.
It's a great point.
Be careful, Kevin.
Minus the Sierra part.
He won't go to lunch with you. He'll go up on the 5th floor and
I'll say call my handlers. That's what that's my go-to. That's how I work.
You're not that guy. Are you?
What are you talking? Look how I dress. Yeah, no. Come on. you not a big fan of these sweatpants from Ross Dress for Less? Come on.
No. You absolutely look like radio. That's all. You look like
radio. Going bowling. No, I can't go bowling. I got to run upstairs. Talk to management.
All right. Let me see what's going on. Next time I run into you somewhere out and about, let me see who you're hanging around.
You got to be careful. That's how I operate.